Nobody from my family came to my wedding, not even my parents, nor my... Hello, besties. Welcome to Emma's Tales. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you. As you do so, sit back and relax as we dive into this story. I stood at the front of the room, staring out at the sea of faces. Laughter rippled through the hall, a string quartet played softly in the corner, and sunlight slanted through the tall windows, painting golden streaks across the polished floor. For anyone else, it might have looked like a perfect wedding day. For me, it was a battlefield between joy and a hollow ache I couldn't swallow. My family wasn't there. Not my parents, not my siblings, not even one cousin trying to sneak in quietly for the food. Not one. I had scanned the room again and again, convincing myself I must have missed someone, but the truth sat heavy in my chest. They had all stayed away. When I smiled for the camera, my lips trembled just enough that I prayed no one noticed. The photographer kept urging me, "Tilt your chin up, look at your partner," as though angling my face toward happiness would erase the empty seats in the back rows. My partner squeezed my hand, their eyes searching mine, silently asking if I was okay. I nodded, too quickly. Inside, I wasn't okay. Inside, I was still the child who had dreamed of her father walking her down the aisle, of her mother fussing over her veil, of her siblings teasing me while secretly beaming with pride. Instead, I walked alone. Instead, I listened to strangers whisper as they tried to piece together why no one from my bloodline thought I was worth showing up for. The ceremony itself blurred. Words floated past me. The vows, the promises, the applause as we were pronounced married. All I could hear was the silence where my family should have been. Every time I glanced at the doorway, I half expected them to come rushing in, late but apologetic, claiming traffic or some silly excuse. But the doors never opened. At the reception, I forced myself to laugh at jokes I didn't hear, to thank people whose names I forgot immediately after. Plates clattered, glasses chimed, and the DJ's voice boomed across the hall, but under it all there was a low hum of curiosity. People kept glancing at me, then at the empty table reserved for family of the bride. My partner's relatives filled their side completely, their smiles wide and their toasts generous. On mine, the chairs sat stiff and untouched, as though even the furniture was embarrassed to be there. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. I caught fragments of whispers when guests thought I wasn't listening. Not even her parents? Did they disapprove of the marriage? Maybe there was a fight. Poor girl. Imagine on her wedding day. I wanted to scream at them to stop, but instead I straightened my dress and tried to carry the weight of their speculation without letting it crush me. The first dance came, and when my partner held me, I pressed my face against their shoulder longer than necessary. I wasn't hiding from the crowd. I was hiding from the truth. My tears burned against my eyelids, but I kept them sealed, terrified that if one slipped, the whole facade would collapse and everyone would see me for what I was, abandoned. Friends stepped in to fill the gaps. My maid of honor raised a toast, so heartfelt it almost masked the emptiness. A college friend wrapped me in a hug that smelled of champagne and whispered, "You're not alone. Not today." I clung to that, but the words couldn't fully drown the silence echoing from my family's absence. The cake was cut, the bouquet tossed, the dances spun out into the night. From the outside, it looked like joy. From the inside, it felt like standing in a room painted bright while a crack spread silently down the walls. As the evening faded and guests began to drift away with laughter still clinging to their clothes, I slipped out to the balcony. The air was cooler there, sharp against my skin. I gripped the railing and finally let my tears fall, salty and hot, slipping past the smile I had worn too tightly all day. The question roared inside me, louder than the music from the hall. Why? Why couldn't they come? Why wasn't I enough to cross whatever line had been drawn between us? My chest ached with it, a deep hollow like someone had carved out part of me and left me incomplete. My partner found me there, wrapping a jacket around my shoulders. "They don't deserve you," they whispered. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to let those words stitch me back together. But all I felt was the jagged tear of rejection. As the last guests said their goodbyes, the hall emptied. Tables were being cleared, flowers bundled up, the string quartet packing their instruments. I sat in the corner, my dress pulled around me like a discarded curtain. The chatter had died down, but in the silence, my thoughts grew louder. I remembered the moment I first knew this might happen, the moment the shift began. Subtle, but undeniable. It was months before the wedding, in the small living room of the house I grew up in. My parents' faces had been unreadable, their silence thicker than words. That night, I had walked out with hope still flickering inside me, telling myself they would come around. But hope had been lying. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Now, staring at the empty space where my family should have been, I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a choice. And as I sat there in my wedding gown, the music fading and the hall nearly empty, my memory pulled me backward, dragging me to that night in my parents' living room. The night I realized my family had already turned their backs on me. I used to think silence meant peace. In our house, it was the language we spoke the most fluently, even more than English. Conversations were clipped, emotions held under the skin like secrets no one dared uncover. We weren't the kind of family that laughed around the dinner table or filled car rides with chatter. We existed beside one another like furniture, always present, rarely acknowledged. When I was small, I mistook it for normal. Other kids would come to school and talk about family game nights, vacations, or how their parents cheered at their recitals. I'd sit there quietly, unable to add my own story, because mine didn't exist. My parents weren't cruel, not in the way people expect when they hear about families that break you. They fed me, clothed me, kept a roof over my head. But love, at least the kind you could touch or feel, was rationed out like water in a desert. My father was a man of hard lines and sharper silences. He carried his pride like a uniform, a badge pinned to his chest. His approval was the sun we orbited around, but it shone so rarely that most of the time we lived in shadow. My mother was softer in appearance, but her softness had thorns. She believed in order, in the way things ought to be, and any deviation from that earned a quiet disapproval sharper than shouting. I had two siblings, an older brother who wore responsibility like a crown, and a younger sister who learned early how to fold herself small and slip into whatever shape would please them most. I fell in between, too stubborn to mold myself, too hungry for acknowledgement to disappear completely. That hunger became my curse. From the earliest years, I tried to earn their love like it was a prize. Every good grade was waved in their faces, every award carried home with trembling hands. My brother didn't have to try. Their pride for him was automatic, the kind that filled rooms without effort. My sister, with her quiet compliance, never drew fire, never disappointed them. But me, I was a puzzle piece they couldn't quite fit into their picture. I remember one winter night, maybe I was 10, standing in the kitchen with my report card clutched in my hands. Straight A's, not a single slip. My cheeks burned with excitement as I handed it to my father. He looked it over, nodded once, and said, "That's what's expected." Then he slid the paper back across the counter and went back to his newspaper. No smile, no warmth, just the weight of expectation pressing down. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. That was the rhythm of our house. Achievement without acknowledgement, existence without embrace. I learned to swallow the ache of wanting more. The cracks deepened as I grew. While my brother followed the map they laid out, medicine, responsibility, the kind of career that impressed relatives, I found myself pulled toward something different. I wanted to write, to create, to live in worlds not bound by their rules. When I was 16, I told my mother I wanted to study literature. She pressed her lips together and said, "That's not a real career." My father didn't bother replying at all. His silence was the verdict. From then on, every choice I made felt like a betrayal to them. When I applied to universities outside their preferred list, I became reckless. When I chose classes that fed my passion instead of their pride, I became selfish. Their disappointment clung to me like smoke. And yet, I kept trying. Holidays were the worst. Crowded rooms filled with relatives who asked the same questions over and over. What are you studying? What's your plan? Why not follow in your brother's footsteps? Their words carried the unspoken accusation. Why aren't you enough? I laughed. I deflected. I pretended not to hear my parents' silence as they let others do the shaming for them. By the time I met the person who would become my partner, the divide between us had already widened into something I couldn't bridge. My family valued appearances, tradition, the right kind of spouse with the right kind of background. They measured people like resumes, where they came from, what they earned, who their parents were. Love wasn't enough. It never had been. I still remember the first night I introduced my partner to them, not in person, but through stories. I sat at the dinner table, excitement bubbling up despite myself, telling my mother how kind they were, how driven, how they made me laugh in ways I hadn't in years. My mother stirred her soup slowly, eyes fixed on the pot. When I paused, waiting for her to ask something, she only said, "Be careful who you give your heart to." My father didn't even look up from his plate. Their silence said more than words. But hope is a stubborn thing. Even then, I told myself they just needed time. That once they met my partner, once they saw the love we shared, their walls would crumble. I clung to that fantasy, weaving it tighter with every smile, every plan we made for the future. What I didn't realize then was that I had already been cast in a role I could never escape. In their eyes, I was the child who strayed, the one who refused to stay inside the lines they had drawn. My love, my joy, my choices, none of it would ever outweigh the disappointment they carried like a second skin. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. The moment that crystallized it all came months later, when I finally told them about the engagement. I had rehearsed the words 100 times, standing in front of a mirror, practicing the smile that was supposed to disarm them. My partner had proposed in the most beautiful, intimate way, and for the first time in years, I felt the kind of happiness I thought nothing could shake. I wanted to share that glow with them, to let them see that I had chosen love, and that it was good. I walked into their living room that evening with the ring heavy on my finger, heart hammering against my ribs. My parents sat together on the couch, the TV flickering in front of them. My brother was visiting, scrolling through his phone, while my sister sat cross-legged on the floor, braiding and unbraiding her hair. "I have something to tell you," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. For pairs of eyes lifted to me, waiting. I held up my hand, the diamond catching the light, and I smiled. "I'm engaged." For a second, there was only stillness, the kind that freezes a room, thick and suffocating. Then my brother looked back at his phone. My sister's hands stilled in her lap, her braid half-finished. My mother blinked once, slow, as though trying to process a foreign language. My father leaned back against the couch, expression unreadable. Finally, my mother spoke. "You're making a mistake." It was the only sentence she gave me, delivered without anger, without warmth, just a flat certainty that cut through the room like glass. My father didn't say anything at all. His silence pressed heavier than her words, heavier than my brother's indifference, heavier than my sister's downcast eyes. In that moment, standing in the living room of the house I had once called home, I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Their silence wasn't confusion. It wasn't hesitation. It was rejection. And though I couldn't admit it yet, though I kept telling myself they would come around eventually, deep down, I knew something had broken that night. I thought telling them would be the hardest part, but the silence that followed was far worse. After the night I announced my engagement, I tried to convince myself that their shock was temporary, that their resistance was just the first ripple before acceptance. I carried that fragile hope for weeks, cradling it like something alive, but every time I reached out, the silence grew heavier. At first, I called. My father never answered. My mother let the phone ring until the line cut off, and when she did pick up once, her voice was brittle. "I'm busy." She hung up before I could say anything else. My brother texted me a single thumbs-up emoji the day after I shared the news, then disappeared into the endless vacuum of his work. My sister stopped responding altogether. The silence was not passive. It was deliberate, a weapon honed over years. In our family, silence was how punishment was delivered. And this time, they wielded it with precision. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. As the wedding plans took shape, the silence became harder to ignore. I mailed invitations, carefully writing each name in my neatest handwriting. Weeks passed, and no one RSVP'd. My partner's family responded within days, sending warm messages and offers to help. Mine sent nothing. When I drove home one weekend to see them in person, my mother opened the door and looked at me as if I were a stranger selling something she didn't need. "Why are you here?" she asked, her hand still clutching the doorknob. "To talk," I said. She sighed but stepped aside. Inside, the air felt sharp, like it was waiting for a storm. My father sat in his chair, his eyes fixed on the muted television. He didn't look at me when I entered. My sister was there too, curled on the couch with a book, though her eyes never touched the page. I stood in the middle of the living room, my hands twisting. "I wanted to see you, to talk about the wedding." My father clicked the volume higher, though the TV remained on mute. My mother crossed her arms. "There's nothing to talk about." My throat tightened. "There is. I want you there. I want all of you there. This is my wedding." My father's voice cut through the room like a blade. "We won't be attending." The words landed with the weight of something rehearsed, as if he had been waiting for me to force him to say it out loud. My chest felt as though it had cracked open, but I fought to breathe. "Why?" My voice shook. "Why wouldn't you come?" He finally looked at me then, his eyes cold. "Because we don't approve. And I won't stand in a room and watch you ruin your life." The words stunned me into stillness. My mother's lips were pressed into a hard line, her silence an agreement more brutal than anything else. My sister lowered her head, her hair falling like a curtain. "I love them," I whispered. "Doesn't that matter to you?" My mother's voice was flat. "You think love is enough. It isn't. You'll see that one day." I left before the tears broke free. On the drive home, my hands gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. The road blurred. My partner reached for my hand when I stumbled into our apartment that night, but I collapsed into their arms and sobbed, the kind of sobs that rack your body until you're hollow. The days after were worse. My father's words echoed in every corner of my mind. Relatives began to weigh in too. A cousin messaged me on Facebook. "Are you sure this is the right choice? Everyone's talking." An aunt called once, her voice dripping with concern that was more about gossip than care. "We just don't want you to regret it," she said. It became clear that my family wasn't only absent, they were actively undermining me. They spread their disapproval quietly, like seeds scattered in the dark, letting rumors grow in my absence. And still I tried. I called again, left messages they never returned. I emailed my father, writing words I never thought I'd have to beg for. "Please come. Please don't do this to me." The reply came 2 days later. Just one line. "We won't be there." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. My partner tried to take the phone from my hands, but I held it tight, as though looking long enough might make the sentence change. Nights blurred into mornings filled with tension. I fought with myself, with the hope that maybe they'd change their minds. I fought with my partner too, not because of them, but because the grief inside me needed somewhere to go. They held me anyway, whispering, "You don't need their approval. You have me." But the hole in my chest kept widening. The wedding approached with terrifying speed. Dresses were fitted, menus finalized, flowers arranged. Each step should have been joy, but for me it felt like walking deeper into a room where the walls closed in tighter with every breath. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt with foolish hope that it was my mother changing her mind. It never was. One night, a week before the wedding, I